Welcome to the Invite Health podcast, where our degreed healthcare professionals are excited to offer you the most important health and wellness information you need to make informed choices about your health. You can learn more about the products discussed in each of these episodes and all that Invite Health has to offer at www.invitehealth.com/podcast. First-time customers can use promo code podcast at checkout for an additional 15% off your first purchase. Let's get started.
Did you know that allergies are one of the most common chronic conditions in the United States? We certainly know that there are certain times during the year when you are going to be more prone to all of the different things, the sensitivities to pollens from trees and grasses and weeds, and even airborne mold spores. And so when it comes to being able to fend these off, there are certain nutrients that can definitely be very, very beneficial if you start to use them well before your seasonal allergy season even begins. So that's what I want to talk about today. I am Amanda Williams, MD, MPH, and let's get right to it. Let's talk a little bit about allergies. And so many people are affected by this. I know when I lived in Michigan, every single year, I would get hit with what they called hay fever. But the runny nose, the stuffy nose, the watery eyes, all of that would happen every single fall as well as in the spring. And I know I certainly was not alone because you saw everyone walking around with their box of Kleenex and trying to run to the local Walgreens or CVS and get their over-the-counter antihistamines. But that may be good for that symptomatic approach. But what if we can get a jump start on that? And that's why I want to talk about what we can be doing if you happen to fall into this category. Now, interestingly enough, there were some new guidelines that were released a few years ago, actually probably close to 10 years now, talking about allergic rhinitis and how this is one of the most common diseases out there and that it affects so many people. And the very first thing that most people do is they run to their doctor and maybe they get a nasal spray or they get put on a prescription antihistamine, or like I said, they're running down to their local pharmacy and picking up whatever over-the-counter seasonal allergy tab or capsule that they can get their hands on. But they actually have now looked at what they should actually be doing. And there was a group of experts who all got together and they were looking at, how using things like the nasal steroids and all of these things, but yet people were still coming back year after year. And so they started to think, maybe we need to start looking at bolstering the immune system before those symptoms even come out. And this is why it's so important to make sure that we are always proactive. So when we think about allergies, they occur when the immune system gets revved up, as I like to put it, but it's basically responding to certain dusts and pollens, ragweed. There's so many different things that can trigger people. Mold spores, as I had mentioned. And we know that what happens is we get this overproduction of our Th2 cells, which are the immune cells that are responsible for destroying foreign pathogens. So when we think about an allergen, for example, and then this actually generates immunoglobulin E. Now, immunoglobulin E is key because this is what we have in our mast cells, and then we have that histamine release. So we get too much histamine, which is what creates all of that problem in terms of the runny eyes, the runny nose, the itchy, watery eyes. All of those things are all being driven predominantly from histamine, but there are other things that are certainly released in this allergic response. So we have prostaglandins, we have leukotrienes. So there's many different components that lead into this. And, some people get wheezing and coughing and have a hard time breathing. Others, may get just kind of a itchy, scratchy throat where they feel like they have to continuously clear their throat. Postnasal drip is very, very common. And so you have to start to look at these things and say, okay, well, every single year I deal with this. What should I be doing? And this is when we say, let's support the immune system. So we start to look at different things and we think, what's the dominant driver for immune defenses? And we think about our intestines and the microbial environment or our microbiome. So having probiotic HX on board every single day throughout the year is always advantageous, just to always be continuously laying down good, healthy bacteria. So probiotic HX should be part of this routine. But then we can also look at other things that come from nature that we know are very good at the regulation of that immunoglobulin E and mast cells and that histamine release. So we look at things such as quercetin and we look at vitamin C. And both of these are very, very beneficial when it comes to that targeted response that the immune system really drives up when it is exposed to those different allergens. We can look at rosmarinic acid, which is why our black seed formulation is kind of a go-to. I always tell folks down here in Florida, if you know that there are certain times throughout the year where your seasonal allergies start to kick up, make sure that you have black seed extract. And the black seed is black cumin extract along with rosmarinic acid coming from rosemary, and then it has cordyceps mushrooms. So it's working on multiple different levels. We're easing inflammation throughout the sinuses and the airways when we are utilizing that black seed. And then we have that rosmarinic acid that's targeting that prostaglandin and histamine release. And then we utilize the cordyceps mushroom as a really good immune booster. So that's a mushroom extract. And we know that mushrooms are very beneficial for the immune system. And it's actually a natural source of vitamin D as well. So it actually is a source of vitamin D2. So we know vitamin D plays a significant role when it comes to immune function. So we have our probiotic, we have our black seed. We want to make sure that we're taking vitamin C on a regular basis, especially during those seasonal flare-ups that you may get. Make sure that you start to take a higher amount of vitamin C. Say if you know every year around Labor Day, for example, is when you start to get that scratchy throat or the runny nose. Well, then a couple of weeks before Labor Day, it would be advantageous to start taking black seed and start taking some additional vitamin C or throw in some quercetin into your daily routine. Now, the other thing is too, is we want to make sure that our liver has the ability to properly go through its stages of detoxification. So our natural antioxidants are at the ready. So it's always a good idea too, to maybe incorporate something in that would support normal metabolic detoxification. So we can look at even the greens HX, which has that probiotic blend along with the fruit and vegetable extract. We can look at the daily detox powder. These are all really wonderful ways to prime up your body's immune system and at the same time heighten your antioxidant capacity, because you're still going to get exposed to whatever that pollen is or whatever that grass is that seems to trigger this. So the higher amounts of the antioxidants and these different nutrients that we have on board, the less likely your immune system is going to get ticked off and start to flare itself up. So when we think about all the people who are dealing with allergic rhinitis or quote unquote hay fever each and every single year, and sometimes multiple times throughout the year, I mean, it affects probably 30% of adults and easily 40% of children, then we must start to look at what we can do in terms of prevention as opposed to just reactionary. Don't wait until the symptom occurs and then you're already kind of miserable and then you're dealing with that. Why not get a head start on that? And then your body will be much more ready for that type of an exposure. So that is just a brief little introduction when it comes to how to fend off seasonal triggers. So we can look at probiotic HX, the black seed extract. We can throw in some extra vitamin C, maybe some quercetin, and then we can also support our liver by adding in the greens HX or the daily detox powder. A lot of different ways in which we can help to really give our bodies that opportunity to fend off seasonal allergies. And I want to thank you so much for tuning into the Invite Health podcast. And remember, you can find all of our episodes for free wherever you listen to podcasts or by visiting invitehealth.com/podcast. Now, do make sure that you subscribe and you leave us a review. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Invite Health. And we will see you next time for another episode of the Invite Health podcast.